Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. Today, we're going to take one last ride on my Gen3 KLR650 because, as most of you know, we've got a new bike in the garage, sort of a replacement. The XR650L here is a very different bike from the KLR650. Both are technically in the same big bore dual sport class, but obviously this is much more of an adventure bike, and this is much more of a dual sport. And in the first video on this bike, I sort of shared my thoughts and feelings about it in comparison to the KLR. Today, I just want to jump back on the KLR now that I've had some decent seat time on the XR and just see how it feels in comparison. Woo! Gotta remember not to yell. I don't want to peek the mic out. So before we get into this, there is one more thing that I realized that I need to kind of apologize for and explain to you guys, and that's the fact that the videos have sort of dropped off in the last week, and there's a very good explanation for that. My wife and I decided that this would be the year we would get back into skiing and snowboarding. And like I mentioned in a short the other day, we had a little bit of an accident. One of us ended up with a broken arm, two broken bones in their arm, needed surgery, 10 screws, and some heavy pain medication that, well, made the decision to wean our youngest very easy, and did not make nights for me very easy. Usually my wife takes care of our kids that wake up still 4 times a night and easily puts my daughter back to sleep by feeding her, which obviously I'm not equipped to do, so I have not been getting much sleep at all. And neither has my wife. She's on the mend, and we're still very lucky. And it's amazing how you can look through a different lens and realize how lucky you are even when things are so bad. So definitely have somebody to thank for that, and I'm feeling pretty good, honestly. But of course that did mean that videos slowed down a bit, which I do have to apologize for. But we're getting back on it and getting as many out as we can here now that the weather is actually warming up and turning into spring. Turkeys up there? Come on, turkeys. I'm trying to do a 0 to 60 here. So this bike does have the stock pipe back on it and is just de-snorkeled with a uni air filter, nothing else, stock ECU and everything. So let's give it a go, 0 to 60. So definitely not quite as thrilling. I didn't have the front end lift like I did on the test ride with the XR650. And if you guys are unfamiliar, you haven't seen the in-depth comparison video that I did on these two bikes, they are very similar. I mean, they're both about 650 cc's-ish. They are, I mean, this one's been redesigned a bit recently, but I mean, they're all kind of old tech. The DR650 as well. They're all around 40 horsepower and have pretty comparable torque numbers. This bike is obviously outfitted more for the road with the big fairing and the windshield and everything. And if you look into the specs as far as ground clearance and suspension travel and stuff, and this bike is definitely much closer to the ground, has much less suspension travel than my XR. And the seat height on this, even the standard model, not the S, is much lower, 33 inches instead of 37 like my XR650L is. That bike, even just pushing it around in the garage, I mean, it feels like a dual sport, where this bike, I mean, especially now the 3rd gen, it feels like an adventure bike. And I mean, there's no way around that, really. I mean, that's what this bike is now. I mean, yeah, it's a single cylinder, and it's not, you know, it's certainly not a 10RA 700, but it is still an adventure bike. I don't really think it's fair to even call this a dual sport anymore. I mean, this thing is a tank, and I use the word tank quite literally because, I mean, what, 25% of this bike is tank. I mean, this thing is just massive. However, it is actually a bit of a windy day, and it was the last time that I was out as well. And I've got to say, I'm pretty darn happy sitting behind this giant tank, this giant bit of plastic, which really, I mean, is absolutely beautiful. I love this bike. I think this is an amazing looking bike. I think it's an amazing bike to ride. It's not amazing in the sense that it's amazing like my 701 is amazing, or even really the XR. I mean, this is more of a cruiser on the road than it is kind of like a hooligan or supermoto bike like either the DR650 or the XR, you know, could easily be made into. I mean, those are those are just much more, the XR specifically, is a much more intense feeling bike. I mean, I got on this and started riding, and it feels like a cruiser for a couple of reasons. One, because I'm sitting more in the bike than I am on the bike, where the XR, my 701, a DR650, you feel like you're sitting on the bike. This bike just feels like it's meant to be on the road, more or less. I mean, not to say that you can't ride this bike off-road. I mean, if you guys haven't seen the videos, I've taken this bike on single track. Now, that doesn't mean that it should be taken on single track or that it's made for that or even that it does well, but it can definitely do it. And as far as capabilities go, I mean, it is really more the rider than the bike. However, I mean, you know, obviously if you buy a bike like this, you shouldn't buy it for single track. That's just not what it's intended to do. It's not going to be fun. I mean, it's maybe going to be fun once you're done and it's over, but I mean that's just not what this bike is meant to do. And it's kind of what honestly I set out to figure out when I really kind of started to figure out what it was that my goal was for my life, I guess, and for this channel. And I think I've definitely proven that these are good all-around bikes. They're not the best bike. They will never be the best bike, but I think they are the best bike for the price, just because you do get basically an adventure bike. I mean, sure, it's not nearly as powerful, and I mean, some of the adventure bikes are just stupid powerful. You don't need that much. I do wish that this bike had 50 or 60 horsepower. I think if this bike had 50 horsepower, this would be maybe not a game changer because it is heavy, but it doesn't have enough power compared to the weight. Back when it was just the Gen 1 and it really was more of a highway-worthy dual sport, I think it probably had enough power. And even the XR and the DR could have more power. I mean, there's a reason they don't. You know, it's old tech, it works, it's reliable. Chickens! My chickens are out enjoying the sun today too. Beautiful day to be a chicken. Beautiful day to be on a bike too. Look at that. Early spring beauty. I think a lot of people don't like this time of year. I really do. You get to see a lot more without all the leaves. But if we drop a gear, yeah, I mean, it just doesn't have the same power to weight ratio that the XR is. And some of you guys are going to hear what I just said and think that I'm bashing the bike. But honestly, I mean, the entire time that I've owned these bikes, I've told you guys that I've loved them. Just because I'm telling you my honest opinion that doesn't mean that I'm bashing them. Maybe you feel like I'm bashing your bike. I'm not bashing your bike. You didn't design the bike. I didn't design the bike. Somebody else, a whole team of people designed the bike. It's not perfect. No motorcycle ever is. If it's perfect for you, that's great. I hope you enjoy your KLR650. I don't take back any of the nice things that I've ever said about this bike, but to be completely, blatantly honest, this is a slug compared to the XR650L, and that's what this bike is really designed to be. It's not designed to be the XR650L. It's not designed to, you know, replace that bike for anyone. The XR definitely feels much more playful, where this is, you know, a bit more reserved, kind of smooth linear power, nothing that's gonna scare you or knock you off the back. Yeah, I can sort of tease the front end up if there's not enough fuel, or if there's not too much fuel in this. Otherwise, if I, just drop the clutch, I mean, it pulls it up pretty easy if you know what you're doing. Where the XR, like I said, I mean, all I have to do is crank on it. On these county roads and the ride that I've done so far, I mean, I can't lie to you guys. I mean, completely stock, this bike would be the one that I would pick for the ride that I just took. Now, if I was really trying to hammer it around these corners and maybe try to pull a few more wheelies, then, well, I think the XR would probably be my choice. But for just getting out and cruising, I mean, this is an amazing bike, and it really does a darn good job just hitting gravel roads, and even like Harrison Hills ATV trails, if you guys have seen some of those videos. I mean, this bike does an excellent job out there and really does handle itself pretty well. The additional rake on the forks, the extended swing arm compared to the Gen 2, I mean, this bike does so much better off-road than the Gen 2 does. I mean, obviously everybody's a little different and expects something a little bit different out of the bike. I generally like to get on this and really pretty much have to ride at least an hour to get to any decent trails. The Tigerton trails that I'm kind of near right now are a little bit closer, but essentially what I want this bike to be able to do, or any bike that I own to be able to do, is be comfortable and enjoyable, maybe a little bit fun in the corners, have a little bit of snot left to kind of carry you through, so I can pretend I'm on a sport bike like I used to be when I was younger. and then I want to be able to get off-road and pretty much take it anywhere that I want. Probably by myself, maybe with luggage and camping gear sometime, but other times stripped down, you know, just seeing how much I can push myself and the bike off-road. And I mean, of course, the XR I think is going to be able to be pushed much farther. And once I get the mods done that I have planned to the XR, I think on the road I'm pretty optimistic. The XR650L, and we'll talk a little bit more about this when I get to the highway here, definitely surprised me with its range, meaning how slow it can go versus how fast it can go, and obviously the comfortability kind of at both ends, and whether the bike enjoys what you're doing to it or not. I mean, this bike, I don't know how many times I've searched for 6th gear on it, but the XR650L, half the time on the ride home, I was in 4th gear when I thought I was in 5th gear. So obviously, I mean, that's a pretty drastic change. Not only is it just okay at 70 in 5th, but it was so comfortable at like even 60 that I was leaving it in 4th and not, I didn't even know it. So I mean, obviously that's a very different thing, and something I didn't really expect, honestly. Everything else, I mean, has pretty much been about what I expected. I don't know if longevity, reliability, and gas mileage really fit in with this video. I think they probably kind of don't, but even though I haven't really experienced much of it on the XR, I think it's probably worth mentioning that the research that I've done kind of leads me to believe that in all of those categories, the KLR650 is definitely going to be, in a lot of cases, kind of a much better option. As far as just even gas mileage goes, I think I get somewhere around 50 miles to the gallon with this pretty much no matter how I drive it. And like I said, I mean, there are some mods done to it. Obviously, I ride it pretty hard. I ride it pretty hard off-road. So, I mean, that's really pretty impressive, where the XR650L, the guy that I bought it from, said that pretty much no matter what you do, you get 35 miles to the gallon, which, man, I mean, I'm going to have to see it to believe it, but it kind of seems like that's what everything online says, too. And I mean, obviously, you know, it's not a deal breaker for me, but it is, oh man, gonna be a big change, especially, you know, since the tank is so big on this. I mean, instead of almost 300 miles of the tank, I'm gonna be looking at 80, which, you know, obviously is gonna require some finagling and some modding to make work for what I need it to work for. As far as reliability, my KLRs have been nothing but reliable. I've not had really any issues with them, other than when the Gen 2 threw actually 2 rocks 2 separate times up behind, or I guess in front of the front sprocket, and severed the neutral wire. But I mean, other than that, I really just have not had any problems with them at all. They've both been great bikes, and I mean, they're meant to run, I think, up to, you know, 30,000 or even more miles, and 30,000 is generally about what I would expect. But it does seem like the XR650L is not a bike that you can really expect to get 30,000 miles out of. Not to say that you can't, and if you guys are out there with those high mileage bikes, please let us know down in the comment section. But I think the valves need to be done, let's just say, a little bit more often. It's much easier to do valve checks on that bike, though. You just pull off little inspection caps and throw a feeler gauge in there, and then adjust the locking nut and the actual part that pushes on the valve. The KLR, you got to take the whole head off and take the cams out and possibly replace the shims rather than just adjusting anything in there. Whether or not any of that is important to you, I think it's definitely good to know. To the handling of the two, this bike, I think a lot of it has to do with the rake, but it feels more solid and planted at speed, and again, kind of like it's where it belongs on the road. Where the XR, I mean, it definitely, I think probably because of the shorter wheelbase too, it feels a little bit squirrely at speed, and this bike at times, with depending on the tires that I had on it, would kind of feel that way too. But it definitely takes a bit more effort, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, to get it to go kind of from side to side. And I mean, I think honestly on the road that is really what you want, but I don't know that it's necessarily something that you need. I mean, it just is going to kind of depend on how important on-road performance and comfort really is to you. But that is honestly probably the other than the power and the sort of attitude, I guess. And honestly, I don't really know how to explain it other than that. This bike just, it feels like it wants to cruise. The XR feels like it wants to rip, I guess is probably a good way to put it. Once you spend enough time on a bike like this, once you spend enough time on a bike, really any other dual sport, you realize that the KLR is just kind of in a class all its own, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. Honestly, I think that's great. I think we should have more bikes like that. I mean, it's great to have options in the same class, but the fact that the KLR is all the way on one end, where are you going? And the XR650L is on the other, being the road versus the off-road, and then the DR650 in the middle. I do wish that really all of them, the XR, the DR, and I guess KLR's already got it, but I wish they would sell them in like a rally trim. I honestly don't know why they don't do it. They really should. I cannot imagine they would not sell a heck of a lot of that version, just to get a little bit more wind protection and just maybe even a little bit bigger tank. Obviously the wind protection is nice. I mean, I pretty much have a clean bubble from there to there, and then, you know, basically up to here, and then all this down here is pretty darn clean air. It's an adventure bike, and adventure bikes look this way for a very specific reason: aerodynamics, wind protection, and just overall rider comfort for long rides. Regardless of anything that I've said today, if either of these bikes is appealing to you and you want to try it, most of them, as long as you don't overpay when you buy it, you can sell for just about the same, maybe, you know, a few bucks less than what you paid for them. I mean, it's worth trying them all out, I think, or as many of them as you're interested in. I think I would get less caught up in the specs and the reliability and the gas mileage and stuff. Just get on it and ride it. I mean, if it's a bike you love, you're not going to want to get rid of it. If it's not the bike for you, sell it and buy something else and try what's next. And that's kind of honestly why I'm moving on, or why I'm going to start to move on a little bit more quickly than I have been in the past. I'm going to try to just keep bikes for 2 years. That way I can mod them, test them, and then move on to something else. So guys, thanks for riding along with me on this beautiful day. I hope you enjoyed the video. If it was helpful to you, let me know down in the comment section, or just hit that like button. If you guys aren't subscribed and you want to see my journey with the XR650L and see how it compares kind of long term to the KLR, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. I would love to have you guys watching along. Thank you so much to all of my viewers and all my patrons and everybody out there that uses the affiliate links. I could not do this stuff without you guys. Huge thanks to you. Until next time, guys, take care, stay safe, stay swanky, get out, enjoy this beautiful world. Any chance you get, no matter what type of bike you have, any bike you can get on ride is a good bike in my book. You just got to pick the right one that'll do exactly what you want it to and be fun to ride. That's definitely important. So we will catch you guys next time. Take care, stay safe, and stay swanky yet again, I guess.